If you want to keep growing your own produce, but it's winter where you are right now, here are crops that you can continue growing, eating and harvesting all winter long. If you're a beginner gardener but you don't know what edible produce you can be growing all winter long, listen up, because this is your ultimate guide to it. The first thing to mention is lettuce and spinach. They are something that's really easy to germinate from seed. You can direct sow or you can grow in a tray and then transplant. It's something that once you start growing, you will never stop growing. If you can get on top of your succession planting of always having a seedling ready to go, you'll never need to buy your own lettuce again. And on the plus side, the seeds are really cheap, and usually your $1 or $2 packet of seeds will come with about 1,000. It's also something that's really great to sow in the shadier parts of your yard. This spot during the winter only gets about 5 or 6 hours of sunlight a day, and yet it still thrives here. The other good thing about lettuce is that, sow it once, have it forever, because if you let a couple of the plants go to seed, they will spread out seed on your beds and then germinate itself. Like all of this red lettuce here was all actually from a singular plant that I accidentally let go to seed when I got a bit lazy. It seeded itself, and now, these beds were full of it too. I pulled it all out of these ones, left it in here, planted some green over here, and then some other things in the rest of these beds, which brings me to my next one. This next one, I've arrived at the conclusion that I think is the best winter vegetable, the best crop to grow in winter. And the good news is that if you have found this video halfway through winter, there is still going to be time to plant this. The seed to harvest time on this is only 8 to 10 weeks. It's something that's really easy to grow. It's something that's quite expensive to buy in the supermarket, and you can only really grow it through late autumn and winter. It is the snow pea. Snow pea is obviously part of the pea family, similar to beans. The only downside to them is that you do need to grow them on a trellis, which if you're like I was a couple of years ago, I was really unwilling to invest money into gardening, but it's totally worth it. You can grow them quite close together, or you can grow them quite spaciously apart, and they will fill out the space. Once you start harvesting them, you'll keep harvesting them until the heat kills them. I planted these only maybe just over a week ago, and I've already got 1, 2, 3, 4 sprouting. Another good thing is that they really like to be direct sown. You can transplant them if you have to, but anytime something likes being direct sown, it speaks to me on such a lazy procrastination level. I can't recommend growing them high enough. Next up, we have what might look like an empty part of the garden bed, but this is actually where I've planted my garlic crop for the year. Garlic is the #1 food that you can grow at home that I will always grow for the rest of my life. It's only going to be my second year growing garlic, but after the results of the first year, I was blown away. It's super productive. In this tiny area that is maybe 1.5 foot by about 1 meter, there are nearly 30 garlic bulbs planted here that will sprout, bulb really well. They need to be in the ground over winter. Here I get to harvest them about late November, early December. You do ideally plant them around that early to mid-April time. These went down for me a little bit late, but I'm still very confident that I'll be able to harvest them, which the good news is that you will be able to too. But if you want to be growing garlic, you need to get it into the ground pretty quickly. And one of my tips with it is to help up your success, get seed garlic that's also grown in your area, because it does take garlic a couple of propagation generations to get used to the soil conditions. And to help it sprout, you can soak it overnight in some watered down sea salt. That will help give the garlic the kickstart that it needs. And these should start sprouting in the next couple of weeks. There is a plant which name literally means easy to grow, and that is the radish. Anytime you don't know what to plant, or you have a little edge of some spot in your garden where something else can go, but maybe not have much space, the radish should be your go-to. There's always some in the garden. You can grow them year round. I have your typical round radishes that you will see in the supermarket every day growing in here. They're growing in this bed. And then also, and edges just like this. On this part of the garden bed, I have put down weed mat just over winter. Because it wasn't the exact width of the bed, This side that's been left exposed, I've made sure to put down a fair bit of mulch, and then I've just put a bunch of French breakfast radishes, the skinny and tall ones. And I've only put them down maybe 4 or 5 days ago, and I'm already getting the first one sprouting up. Very easy to grow all year round. Now for something a little bit more left field, and it's actually a native, the lily pilly tree. A lot of people will have these in their yards and not realise that they're actually edible and actually quite delicious. They're native to Australia, and they're also native to a lot of Southeast Asia. And through this part of the year, they actually produce these lovely pink and red berries that are starting to come into season about now. Early winter all the way through to early spring is when they're fruiting. In my opinion, they taste something like a really sweet apple that has a really herbal finish. Next up, we have probably the most popular winter vegetable, broccoli. Now, in this part of Victoria and through a lot of Australia, we don't get much frost, but we do still get about 2 to 4 proper frosts each year. So when you're selecting your broccoli species, just make sure you get one that's frost tolerant. You can still grow, the broccolis that you grow over winter will taste better than ones that you get any other time of year, because the brassicas plants actually produce extra sugar as a way to help them stop themselves from freezing, which means that then once you're eating them after you've harvested them, they're sweeter and more delicious and full of flavour than they would be any other time of year that you've grown them. Next up, we have cabbage. Similar story to the broccoli, where when you're planting this, it's something that you can absolutely grow all the way through winter, but just make sure that when you're selecting your variety, that you are in fact picking, there's a spider on me, that you are in fact picking a frost tolerant variety. Potatoes, boil and mash them, stick them in a stew. I would definitely put this in the category of something that is fun to grow over winter, in that I find gardening fun and rewarding, and you sometimes have to stretch to find plants that you can grow, not ones that are necessarily overly productive. Potatoes are definitely in that camp. That's why I only grow a couple in potatoes. These are Sebagos from certified seed potatoes from my local nursery. And if you want to know why you should grow from seed potatoes instead of from supermarket potatoes, make sure to check out my video on that. Perennial herbs. When the weather of summer goes, the taste doesn't have to go with it. A lot of people might love having those massive bushes of sweet basil that you get over the summer that gradually die off as the weather gets cooler. But what a lot of people don't know is that there's actually perennial species of basil that you can grow all year round. Now, it's not quite the same flavor profile as sweet basil. It's a little bit spicier. Basil is actually part of the mint family, and you really get that coming through as this with perennial basil. But as part of this, some other herbs that you can grow all year round. Thyme, this is one of the #1 plants that I would never ever grow from seed. It's kind of annoying to get germinating. This is one that I actually just propagated. That's only 8 weeks ago or so, and it's really starting to come up properly. Rosemary is something that's awesome to have year round. It's one of my favorite herbs. I once had someone say to me that name a savory dish that isn't improved with garlic, rosemary, and salt, and I'm still struggling to think of one. My #1 tip for herbs is don't underestimate how much nutrition they actually want in their soil. The best thing that you can do is have a dedicated full bed for your herbs. They will absolutely love that. They'll thrive, they'll get huge. If you can't do that, like me, where you don't really have the right nice sunny conditions, growing space where you can dedicate a herb bed, the next best thing is grow bags. I would not be trying to grow them in containers. Also, a lot of people try and grow herbs in really small containers. Big grow bags, they thrive awesomely. As an example, I will put a shot here of this rosemary plant next to one that I put in a plastic container and that grew their first 12 months in identical conditions. The only difference being one was in a grow bag and one was in a self-watering plastic pot that's actually quite a high quality pot, yet just the size difference and also quality and healthiness looking of the plant, out of the ballpark difference. and not actually pictured in that little garden bed, but some other herbs that I would really encourage you growing year round. Oregano, you can use it for nearly everything, and parsley. Both of those two are somewhat easy to kill, but they germinate really easily. They're really easy to grow from seed that once you get a single seed packet of it, you'll never go without it. It's something that I've currently got growing, taking my own advice. I have direct sown them straight into a grow bag over here. And that is the oregano starting to sprout. Before I mentioned the number one crop that I will always grow for the rest of my life will always be garlic, because it's easy to grow and it saves you so much and you always need it, it stores well. The other crop that I will always grow will be carrots. The one downside to growing carrots over winter is they do take a while. They do take the full winter and a little bit more. So I don't plant them in the ground, nor do I plant them in one of my main beds. But what I have done is I've just bought this massive plastic container that has plenty of depth, plenty of room for the carrots to grow. And then after that, they're so easy to plant. What I did here is I just, in the dirt, drew a spiral that I then take your carrot seeds, you sprinkle them all over through the spiral, then just put a little bit of covering dirt, just some mulch down. And then after that, they're pretty good to go. And one of the, upsides and downsides to carrots is that in order for them to grow the single big taproot that we like to eat, you shouldn't fertilize them, which also means that they're really easy to grow really lazily because you don't have to feed them. Why am I so keen on carrots? A lot of people say that you haven't had a real tomato until you've tasted a homegrown one. I think the same thing about carrots. When you pull a fresh homegrown carrot out of the ground, the aroma is incredible. If you're a fair bit of an enthusiast cook, you've probably encountered carrot is used in stocks as an aromatic, and I always wondered why that was until I first grew my own carrots. You pull it out of the ground and it smells almost medicinal. It is an overwhelming scent. And for that reason, carrots are one of my number one crops to grow in winter. You may have noticed a tiny change of scenery with this one, and that's because this is something that you actually aren't growing in the garden. It's something that you can grow year round, but I think with the temperatures of this time of year, starts to thrive really well. In fact, this is something that isn't even a plant. I'm talking about growing mushrooms. These mushroom kits are something that isn't that great of a bang for buck. It's one of the things that is more so for fun than for saving money or getting a lot of produce. But once I did one, I got addicted. But out of these kits that are $25 to $35, including postage, they're not that great, but they're something that you grow on your kitchen bench top. Super fun, super delicious. You can get some really funky varieties. And you will get a good 2, 3, sometimes 4 flushes of mushrooms coming through. You can get maybe nearly up to a kilo of a high quality variety such as oyster mushrooms. And then something else you can do is, because there's still living mycelium in here once you've done, something I'm going to be doing this year, and then I will report back with a video if it works out, is transporting some of this substrate into a bucket onto some pasteurized sugarcane where the mycelium will then grow. This will be in a bucket. And then once that's done, I should be able to get some more mushrooms fruiting and sort of have a bit of an infinite mushroom glitch going on. In fact, I love these so much that once this is done, you can actually store them in the fridge until you're ready to go. So I've got a whole nother kit here ready. When the final flush of this one is done, I will just pull this out of the fridge. It's really easy to grow as well. You just cut a hole in the side, cut an X in a plastic bag that's in here. Wait, you do have to mist it with some water a couple times a day, which is why having it somewhere like in the kitchen is such a cool place to have it. And it's also really, really rewarding to watch, because once it starts what's called pinning, the first couple of tiny mushrooms coming through, they double in size about 2 times every day. So you will walk past and they'll be a bit bigger, and then you walk past and they'll be a bit bigger. And then over the space of about 24 hours, they'll go from being what you would probably call a small mushroom to being full size and ready to harvest.